All right, so you're a contractor and you wanna make more money in 2024. Well, you found the perfect video because in today's video, I'm gonna share 5 simple tips on how to make more money as a contractor. All right, number 1 is very simple and I'm sure you've heard it a million times, so I don't wanna spend too long here, but it's raise your prices. And I think a lot of you out there, you're probably gonna say this, oh man, Tyler, I've heard that all the time. I know I gotta raise my prices, but I don't know how. So in this video, I don't wanna just talk about raising your prices, because if you do it wrong, it's not gonna work. So in theory, right, it all sounds good. We're gonna raise our prices, everyone is gonna say yes, and all of a sudden we're making 20% more money for the same exact project. But you're nervous about it, and it makes sense because you're like, hey, Tyler, if my price is here and now it's gonna be here, well, I need 10 jobs a month to stay busy, and I'm only staying busy with 10 jobs a month right now. So if I raise my prices and half the people say no because of that, I'm only gonna do 5 jobs instead of 10. And that's a huge problem, right? And as a contractor, we have this huge balance. It's all about making money, but also, especially if you start to grow, now all of a sudden it's not just about you, it's about taking care of you and your team, right? Because your team's gotta eat too. You can't just sell less jobs and say, hey guys, you know what? I decided to raise my prices and all of a sudden you guys gotta stay home because we're not as busy. That's not an acceptable answer. So how I suggest to do it is number 1, if you're gonna raise prices, say by like 20 or 30%, maybe even 40%, we're gonna talk a little bit more about how later, but you gotta have a plan to get more leads, because if you're not basically getting more leads, more people asking you for your services, and you're already having a hard time staying busy and you raise your prices, well then you're not gonna have any work, and that's a problem, right? So what I always suggest, it's very simple. If you wanna raise your prices by like say 20 or 30%, increase your marketing budget by like 10% of revenue. For instance, let's just say you want to do $50,000 in revenue this month, then you want to spend $5,000 in marketing. And you're going to panic and you're going to be like, oh man, that's so much to spend on marketing. But it's not if you're charging higher prices, right? They have to go in succinct, right? You have more of a marketing budget and you're going to get way more leads and you're going to look way more legit, but in return, you have to charge higher prices, and at the end of the day, you're gonna make more money. Number 2, and this kind of goes hand in hand, it's to pick a niche, right? Because if we're spending more money in marketing, how is it gonna be effective if you're trying to be everything to everyone? And I know I use this term all the time, and so I'm sorry if you're tired of hearing it, but if you're going fishing and I specifically wanna catch swordfish because those are the best, I have to fish with what a swordfish wants. I can't go out there trying to think, oh man, I'm gonna throw out a bait that a swordfish would like, that a shark would like, that a crawdad would like, and it's the same bait for all of them. That's not how it works. So for you as a contractor, in order to sell jobs at a high price, people have to feel like you're the best at what you do. And no one's gonna believe you that you're the best at what you do if you say, oh, I do fences. Oh, and also if you want a deck, I could do that. Oh, and by the way, I'm also great at drywall. So I'm gonna finish your basement while I'm here. And even while I'm doing your basement, I'm gonna do the plumbing. Then they're gonna say, there's no way that they're going to trust you with all of that stuff if you're claiming to be an expert at all of them, especially when you're starting. Obviously, if you're a GC, that's different. But if you're a specialty contractor, you need to be specialized. Number 1, people are gonna trust you more. It's gonna get them to say yes easier. And number 2, you're gonna work more efficiently and more fast because you and your team are gonna be more specialized. It's gonna be easier to grow. Number 3 is to build a brand, not a company. And so I'm sure you've heard a lot about that before too, and it's kind of confusing, right? Because to a lot of people, it sounds the exact same. And so what's the difference between a brand and a company? A company is basically just a legal structure that you are using to operate a business, right? So for instance, a company is just like an LLC, it's your trademark, it's your name, and it's the service you provide. And it's kind of more the nuts and bolts, but the brand is totally different. The brand is how people see you and how they perceive you. It's the visual of your company. It's what makes people think of you. It's like the feeling that people get when they think of your company. That's brand, okay? And so how do you do that? Right? When I say build a brand, here's the difference, right? If I am a company, I'm gonna go out as a contractor, I'm gonna say, oh man, I'm a great concrete guy. And they think that just because I'm a great concrete guy, all of a sudden I have a great brand. But that's only half the battle, is knowing the skill. The other half is getting people to open up their wallet, take out their money, and give it to you, right? And if you don't have a brand, that's gonna be a heck of a lot harder. Because there's a lot of people who claim to have the skill. There's not as many people who have a great company and a great presence. So how do you do that, right? You look more professional through things like branded apparel. You might have a great website. You're gonna have a great logo. You're gonna have a great marketing message. And you're gonna have a reason for why people should choose you, right? Why should I choose you, Joe Schmo, over the next guy? For me and my concrete business, the 3 things that I tell people are: 1, we have a lot more service staff, right? I have project managers, I have office managers, I have operations people, so that way I can ensure that your project goes smoothly. Also, I do a way better warranty than all of my competitors. That's part of my selling proposition. If you're the opposite, you say, hey, the reason why you choose me is I'm a smaller company and I'm gonna treat you like I would treat my mom. And not only am I gonna be here selling your job, but I'm also gonna be the one installing it, right? All of us have different angles in different ways to present our company based on where we're at. But if you're not trying to present that separate angle and you're just coming at it saying, oh yeah, I could do concrete and this is your price, you're not gonna sell very well. A perfect example is Apple sells AirPods for like $200, and there's brands on Amazon who are struggling to sell basically the same product for like $20, so 1/10 of the price, but Apple outsells them all day, every day. The only difference is the brand behind it. Number 4 is knowing your numbers. I talk to so many contractors and they are so clueless on the number side, and I know it's hard, right? Because when you first start, you're the head of finance, you're the head of marketing, you're the head of sales, you're the head of everything. But this is one of those things where you cannot afford to be ignorant on. You cannot afford to not know how much money you're actually making at the end of the day. What are your overhead costs? What are your gross profit percentages? What sales numbers do you need to hit at what gross profit for you to actually make a real profit? Because here's the thing, if you're going into business, and I just downloaded a report the other day from a very high-end company, like financial company, and the average contractor, specifically concrete contractor, because that's what I do, only makes 7% on their money. So you got to think about that. And also the average contractor does $1 million in sales. So if you're below that, you're technically below average. But what you got to think about is if the average contractor only makes 7%, and let's just say you don't know your numbers, and on average, you're making very small errors. You're like, oh man, I didn't account for gas, but it doesn't matter. I didn't account for this because it doesn't matter. It's not like we're in a super high margin business, right? We're not selling Apple AirPods where we're at an 80% margin. That's not our business model. Our business model is we have to be very efficient. We got to be very thin on knowing what our numbers are and being very smart the way that we spend our money. So if you don't know your numbers, then you're operating in the blind, and chances are, if you miss the small things, that's all it's gonna take. That's gonna be the difference between you making 7% or you losing 7%. Or maybe you know it really, really well and you're really diligent and you're gonna make 20% on your money. So long story short, if you wanna make more money, then you have to know how money operates. And number 5 is to work smarter and not harder. That's another thing you've probably heard all of the time, but you're probably like, I don't understand how to do that. Because in the moment, right, you feel like you're doing everything you can. You're super busy and you feel like you don't know how to work smarter. So let me give you a couple of examples. Number 1 is to have a legit sales process. Say for instance, just this week, I hired a brand new sales rep in my concrete company and I was training him. And what was funny is he came from actually a landscape company background, so he knows a lot about the products. But at his landscape company, I said, okay, how do you guys sell your jobs? And he's like, oh, well, I get a lead, I call the lead, I set up an appointment, and I go out there. And that is what most contractors do. But little do they know, that's working hard, but not smart, right? Because as I was training him this week, we took on about 30 sales calls all in 1 week. And if you asked me, is it possible to go to 30 sales estimates in person in a week? Probably not. Because not only do you have to go, spend the time, do the measurements, talk to the customer, but then you also have to come back to the office, put everything in, send it off, cross your fingers, and just hope that they say yes, even though you don't really know anything. So how you work smarter and not harder is what we do is when we get a lead, I use the Contractor CEO software, I text the lead, I say, hey, thanks for reaching out to us, schedule an appointment to talk to us, right? So as I'm going through the week, I'm not even having to reach out to the leads, that's being done for me. People are booking appointments right to my calendar without me thinking about it. And then before I drive out there, I have a very simple conversation. Hey, tell me about your project. Tell me about the scope of work. Tell me about your timeline. I build a great connection, great rapport. And then I even give them a rough estimate before I drive out there. And the cool thing is, it saved me, out of those 30 phone calls, I only ended up scheduling 10 on-sites. Because 20 of the people, when I gave them the price, they were like, oh man, you're telling me that my concrete patio is gonna cost me $15,000 for a big patio? I was hoping for no more than 5. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry, but that's basically what our prices are. This is what it is. This is why they're this way. And I try to fight for it. But at the end of the day, if you go out, you meet the person, you shake their hand, it does not matter how great of a salesperson you are. In my opinion, if the customer only plans on spending $5K, if they only have $5,000, then you're not going to convince them to spend $15,000. So all of that time was wasted time that we didn't have to do. I didn't have to drive out and meet the customer. We saved all that time. So while most of my competitors say if they get 30 phone calls, they have to schedule for 3 or 4 weeks estimates, I get it all cranked out in 1 week. That's how you work smarter, not harder. All right, so here's a very quick recap. Just as a reminder, step number 1 is just to raise your prices, but you can't do that by itself. You have to spend more on marketing. Step number 2 was to pick a niche. You can't be everything to everyone. Step number 3 is to build a brand, not a company. It's all about perception versus reality. Number 4 is to know your numbers. What you don't track, you can't get better at. Number 5 is to work smarter and not harder. If you need help with any of these things, specifically building a brand and marketing, then my team here at Contractor CEO is built to help you. So check the link down below in the description. And if not, I'm gonna catch you guys in the next video. See you then.